The LA Clippers have had plenty of great teams the last 15 or so years, and you could never have said that in any 15-year period of Clipper history since they moved to Los Angeles, or honestly, even going back to Buffalo. But what team was the greatest Clipper team of all time? It has to be a recent one. And I don't know if there's anyone better than yours truly to talk about who the greatest Clipper team of all time is on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA and going into my 19th season as a Clipper fan this fall. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dime Dropper Pod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA sports, LA Clipper, NBA, and NBA history content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available on all your favorite podcast platforms, including YouTube, where I want you to let me know who the greatest Clipper team of all time was. Now, the reason why I chose this topic, I felt like, why not do a more lighthearted episode, reflect on some good memories, some not so great memories, but just take a trip down memory lane. And, we have an expectation of this upcoming Clipper team that maybe, fingers crossed, we can be the answer. The 2023-24 team can be the answer to this question of who the greatest team of all time is for the Clippers. And I'm going to be going through the candidates, giving my winner, and what I think is the missing piece that no Clipper team has ever had that they need to be the new winner of this question, or new answer to this question. So let's talk about some of the candidates. I wanted to do this because I feel like it's also a little bit more positive, talking about great Clipper teams in hopes that this 2023-24 team can surpass those teams. But let's talk about the candidates. And the first team I've chosen 5, and I'm going to rank them just for fun. I'm going to rank them. And if you want to rank them in the comments, you can as well. But let's start with the first one, the team that made me a Clipper fan, the team that I did an episode on before I went to Qatar, I want to say in November, with Chris Wild from the LA Clipcast, the first Clipper podcast. It was a great episode talking about the 05-06 Clippers, the first Clipper team to win a playoff series, and I have them as a candidate. Why? They were one game away from the conference finals in a very good Western Conference. Maybe not as good as the Lob City era Western Conference, but a very good one nonetheless. We played a Nuggets team in the first round with Carmelo Anthony, who was in his third year, young stud, of course. You also had Marcus Camby, Andre Miller, Kenyon Martin, who had the whole suspension thing and the back and forth with George Karl. But that series, we knew the Clippers were going to win for the most part, and they did. And the reason why that Clipper team, I think, is so special is they had this experienced group of players. It wasn't a young team by any means outside of like Sean Livingston. Chris Kaman was only in his third season, but the vets that led the team, Elton Brand, Sam Cassell, Cuttino Mobley, Corey Maggette, these guys had Sam Cassell. I said Sam Cassell. These guys had been around the block. They knew what it took to be great. And we kind of put it all together by getting Sam Cassell that season. And Sam, he won everywhere he went. And when I don't mean win the championship everywhere he went. He has 3 rings, 2 in Houston, 1 in Boston. But everywhere he went, he made them better. He made them better. The Minnesota Timberwolves, 2004, their best team in franchise history, Sam Cassell. For a while, the 06 Clippers were our best team in franchise history. And Sam Cassell led the charge. I think there was a level of physicality of that team, that Clipper team. Also, given the times, mid-2000s, the league was still filled with brutes, and it was very physical, slow, half-court basketball. I mean, it's crazy because I recently watched a couple of months ago Clippers against the Denver Nuggets, game 1 of that series I'm referencing, and there was so much, chucking and bumping off the ball. It was very physical. But I think that '06 team, I would be selling it short if I didn't mention the fact that Elton Brand was just one of the best players in the NBA that year. He was an absolute monster. That Clipper team was 47-35, which was the fifth best record in the West. Ended up getting the sixth seed, but that was when the divisional rules still made it so that if you won the division, you were a top three seed regardless. So the Denver Nuggets winning a weak division with a third seed, and the Clippers strategically placed themselves sixth so they could have home court advantage even as a lower seed. But Elton Brand averaged 25 and 10 that year to go along with 2.5 blocks on 53% shooting and 77.5% from the foul line. He was an absolute beast. Clippers won their, that was the only series to this day that the Clippers have won that didn't make me sweat. To this day, the only series we have ever won that didn't make me sweat, 5 games, quick and painless against Denver. Obviously, losing in game 7 to the Phoenix Suns was brutal, especially games 3 and 5. Game 3 where Steve Nash made that game winner at the Staples Center, and then game 5 with that Rajah Bell shot that still breaks my heart to this day. But if Rajah Bell misses that 3, Clippers go up 3-2 heading back to LA, I think we finish them off. It's just one shot. One shot could be the difference between you going to the conference finals and you not. I think that Clipper team, the one reason why I say it's a candidate is they were so mentally tough. They were so mentally tough. But Phoenix, they had the experience. They did have the best player in the series in Steve Nash. But Elton Brand, I mean, he was pretty fantastic. The second candidate I've chosen is the 2013-14 Clipper team. They have the most wins in franchise history to this day, 57-25. It was Glenn Rivers' first year as Clipper coach, and I think one of the big things he did was he elevated DeAndre Jordan big time. He said, you know what? You are going to be a defensive monster and a monster on the glass. And we already had the lob threat, 2013 and 2012. DeAndre was showing that Lob City was alive and well with the crazy dunks that he had, most notably the one where he took Brandon Knight's soul away, and we haven't seen it since. But in 2013-14, DeAndre took a huge leap. He averaged 10 points, 13.6 boards, and 2.5 blocks. He also played all 82 games, and we had Blake Griffin play 80 games, and he was third in MVP voting. That was the start of his prime, in my opinion. 24 points, 9.5 boards, 4 assists, and a steal on 53% shooting for BG, and he got his free throws up to 71.5%. He was awesome. I think in that season, either he or LaMarcus Aldridge were the best power forwards in the NBA. You can make an argument for Tim Duncan. It probably was Tim Duncan, given that he won the championship. And you could argue that Tim Duncan was the best player on that championship team. But after Tim Duncan, I think it was Blake Griffin or LaMarcus Aldridge. I would probably say Blake Griffin. He was an absolute monster. He really took a leap that year from a skill perspective, having some better touch around the basket. His pick and pop jump shot was much better. His jump shot in general was just much better. And that allowed Chris Paul in his pick and roll game to take on a different dimension because teams were giving him that 18-footer on that pick and pop, icing Chris Paul to the baseline for those first 2 years that they were together. And when in 2013-14, Blake just showed a different level of confidence, a different level of polish to his offensive game. And then, of course, you had Chris Paul, who did miss 20 games that season. And the fact that Darren Collison was able to come in and add that solid point guard play with CP3 out, I think was so valuable. And obviously having JJ Redick come into this fold, he only played 35 games that season, but when he played, he definitely showed how good he was for our half-court offense, moving without the ball and being able to stretch the floor. And then Jamal Crawford, he won Sixth Man of the Year in 2013-14, and he was absolutely awesome. 18.6 points a game. Chris Paul, obviously, still arguably the best point guard in the NBA. We get the 3 seed, beat a very good Warriors team despite the Donald Sterling fiasco going on. And then against the Thunder, oh, man, Game 5, Chris Paul's meltdown and our meltdown as a team. Just a game we had in the bag, just like 2006. I remember watching that game in 2014 and feeling like it was 06 all over again. Game 5 going wrong. Then we lost in game 6, a game that I attended, and we threw trash onto the court. That was crazy. My next choice, 2015 Clippers. Virtually the same squad. Instead of Darren Collison, though, you have Austin Rivers and the team that beat the Spurs. We only had one less win in the regular season in 2014-15, but second in the league in points per game, first in offensive ratings. We had the best offense in the NBA, although I'd probably say the Golden State Warriors had the best offense in the league. Defense, middle of the pack. But in the playoffs, I thought we showed such resilience. And the fact that Chris Paul, I thought he peaked. I honestly would take 2015 Chris Paul, either that or 2008 Chris Paul as the best years of his career. He was incredible. He played 82 games, which is really crazy to think about now. And he was just spectacular. 19 points, 10 assists for the season, 48.5% from the field, 40% from three, and 90 from the line. So he almost shot 50, 40, 90. He was incredible. No doubt in my mind, after Steph Curry, he was the best point guard in the NBA that year. And for him to beat San Antonio, the defending champs, and Blake was just out of his mind that playoffs as well. DJ was great. And we made every single big play in that game 7 to beat San Antonio. I fully thought that was the year we were going to the conference finals. And then, of course, 3-1, we're kicking Houston's ass. And all of a sudden, we collapse in game 6 at the hands of Josh Smith and Corey Brewer. I mean, that was a really tough one. But I think that team, if you had asked me before Kawhi Leonard and Paul George came, what's the best team in Clipper history, I would have said 2015 because they were truly better than Houston. And they just blew it for a quarter and a half, or really one quarter. And it was just mainly Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, in my opinion. Their complacency, their lack of effort defensively, lack of focus. And then Matt Barnes, JJ Redick, and Jamal Crawford, they couldn't hit shots when it mattered. And then Chris Paul, I mean, he had 8 points in the fourth, but 2 for 7. We just didn't have a true guy that was so reliable in scoring the ball when the going got really tough in the highest levels. Because look, yeah, that was Chris Paul for one series, but I don't know if you can expect a 6-foot guy whose best attribute isn't even scoring to be the best scorer in crunch time on a championship team. It's very hard. So that was Lob City's flaw, and I think you saw it there, even though he still should have won that series. And then you get to 2020, which was a weird season because it was cut short through COVID. Going into the season, I thought there was no doubt we were the best team in Clipper history, absolutely loaded. And it was the first Clipper team to ever finish with the second seed, 49-23 in the 72 games. They had so much depth. Kawhi Leonard obviously was a top 3 player in the league in the regular season, top 4 at worst, 27.7 boards and 5 dimes. He missed only 15 games, so he was pretty healthy that season, and a lot of those games were with load management. 47% from the field, 38 from 3, and 89 from the line. He was a beast. And then Paul George, he was good when he played, but only 48 games played, so he missed a third of the season, missed 24 games, and averaged 21.5 points coming off the season where he was third in MVP voting. That was a letdown. You know, Paul George was never fully healthy in that regular season, dealing with that hamstring injury. But because we had Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell, who were like a guaranteed 18 points a game, and they were. Lou Williams, 18.2, Montrezl Harrell, 18.6. They were both in the running for 6th man of the year. Montrezl won. But we all know what happened with that team in the bubble. 3-1 collapse. And I just think the vibes were not fully there that whole season. Then there's the 2021 team that made the conference finals for the first time ever, beating the Mavericks in 7, not having the smoothest regular season, but getting the job done. And coming up, going to be talking about which of those teams I am going to go with and why as the greatest team in Clipper history. I got to tell you a little something about FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll have $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Go Dodgers. All right. So after evaluating the candidates, I'll put it like this. 2006, most toughness. 2013-14, most balanced. 2014-15, most momentum, 2019-20 most stacked, and 2020-2021 the winner. I'm going with the 2021 Clippers because they broke the curse, duh, and they had the best player, Kawhi Leonard. When I'm building a team at any level, I'm always looking for who's my number one guy. Can I trust that guy to lead me to the promised land? And as great as Elton Brand was, as great as Blake Griffin was, and as great as Chris Paul was, none of them are as proven and as good of a basketball player as Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard can get you 30 on a given night. He can guard your best player in crunch time when need be. He's got a very high basketball IQ, and he's a great contested shot maker. And that's what you need to win championships, really, in any era. And so I think Kawhi being that number one guy, him being one of the best players in the league in 2021, playoffs and regular season, for the numbers 25 points, 6.5 boards, and 5 assists to go along with 1.6 steals per game on 51% shooting from the field, 40% from three, and 88.5% from the line. He missed 20 games in the regular season, played 52. And in the playoffs, he was averaging 30 points a game, 8 rebounds, 4.4 assists on 57% shooting from the field, 39 from three, and 88 from the line. I repeat, 30 points a game on 57% shooting from the field, and a lot of his shots are jump shots. That is insane. We never had a player, not Chris Paul, not Blake Griffin, or Elton Brand, play at that high a level in the postseason for the simple fact that they're not as good as him. Kawhi Leonard against the Dallas Mavericks in Game 6, I'd say either that or Chris Paul in Game 7 against San Antonio are the best performances in Clipper history. And that Game 6 at Dallas, there was so much pressure on the Clippers, so much, especially after the bubble the previous season. You're playing against the Dallas team with no other stars besides Luka. You had Ty Lue, new coach, expected to maybe go all the way, and you're about to lose in an earlier round to the team that you beat last year in the bubble. I mean, it would have been the ultimate embarrassment. We might have seen them blow it up right then and there because the ridicule would have been so bad. But Kawhi Leonard stepped up to the task. And then look, as much as I love Blake Griffin, there's no way that he is better than Paul George. I mean, you can say 2014 Blake is better than a certain Paul George, but I don't think Blake Griffin ever is better than 2021 Paul George. The skill that PG has, his ability to score at all three levels, just a better scorer in my opinion, and a better defender. Basketball IQs, they're both a little suspect in my eyes. I think Blake Griffin's actually a better passer for his position especially, but we've seen Paul George lead teams to the Eastern Conference Finals. We saw him put the team on his back and hit the big shots when we needed them in games 5 and 6 against Utah. Hostile environment. Blake Griffin and Chris Paul weren't able to do that in that second round. And look, I don't believe in like the voodoo and the curse stuff, but there was a legitimate feeling that we were not going to be allowed to do anything by the basketball gods when it came to getting out of the second round. And all of a sudden, when it was almost time to get out that second round, there was a hex on the basket where shots just wouldn't fall. And Paul George seemed to break that hex. He averaged 27 points, 9.6 boards, and 5.4 assists in the playoffs. I mean, he was just spectacular in that 2021 run. And I mean, it's very special. It's very special what Paul George was able to do for his legacy and for his Clipper legacy by doing that. So I'm going to go with the 2021 team. I think you can make an argument that the West was better in certain other years, but I think there was a lot of pressure. And for them to do that, I just think also the firepower, Reggie Jackson playing at such a high level, Luke Kennard, Terrence Mann, Marcus Morris, one of his best seasons of his career, Patrick Beverley. I mean, we were pretty loaded. DeMarcus Cousins even, Rondo. Like, we had a lot of players and a lot of contributors. If it's a Zubats, I mean, come on. Come on. I'm going with 2021. And at my second pick, going with 2015. We beat San Antonio, and we should have beaten Houston. Third, I'm going with 2014. Chris Paul blew it in that game 5, but we were really good. And then I'm going with 06. mental toughness, but 47 wins, and I don't think they had as much firepower star-wise as Lob City. 2020 is my fifth choice because I just don't think that the chemistry was good inside the locker room. You had Montrezl Harrell, kind of talking about the preferential treatment that Kawhi and Paul George were getting. There was a certain level of arrogance on that team. I think they were just rolling off talent. Clearly didn't want to be in the bubble, and it just felt weird. So I'm going with them fifth, even though I know some people think that was our best team because of the stacked nature of it, but I disagree. Anyway, coming up, going to be talking about what the missing pieces as to why the Clippers have not won it all yet. What's the missing piece in making the 2023-24 team, or just a team in the future, the answer to this question of who the best Clipper team is ever? Going to be talking about that coming up. All right. So the missing piece. Well, let's look at what each team was lacking for me. The 06 team, I love Elton Brand, but he was not the best player on a championship team. And we had no other all-star on the roster, even though Sam Cassell could be an all-star on a given night. So we just didn't have enough star power on that team. 2014, I mean, our offensive rating, first in the NBA, as I said, and a top 10 defense as well, 9th in the league there. I just don't think Chris Paul or Blake are the best player on a championship team. I really think that was the flaw. Kevin Durant was easily the best player on the court. And then Russell Westbrook arguably played like the second best. That's the thing. I love Blake Griffin, but he wasn't better than Russ. Although in the regular season, you could argue he was. Regular season, he probably was because Russ missed a lot of games, but it was a little different in the playoffs. Westbrook, I mean, he'd been to the finals before. The Thunder, I mean, Westbrook and KD were just like an instant 25 points each at that time. So I just think that with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, we were always going to run into a player that was better than those guys. And then if they had a supporting cast that was basically equivalent, they'd probably win. And I just think Lob City lacked mental toughness. 2015, same thing. 2020, camaraderie. Camaraderie and a healthy Paul George. You can't win a championship when your second best player is missing a third of the season. 2021, health and luck. And I think that's the missing piece in all this. The Clipper organization, the Clipper franchise, for the longest time, we never had that number one guy. For the longest time, we just never had a great team. But then we got we lacked a number one guy. Then we got that in Kawhi. But now what we lack more than anything is luck. The missing piece, the thing that all teams that win the championship have. And that luck can be shown in a number of forms and ways. But the main one is injuries, health. And sometimes you just get unlucky with injuries. And the Clippers have found themselves on the unlucky side so many times. It feels like more so than anyone else from the beginning of their franchise's inception, the move to LA, and to this day, new owner, no difference. The key players get injured consistently. And I think that last piece, health and luck, I guess the two are both intertwined, or correlated, I should say, is the missing piece that no contending Clipper team has truly had. Now, that's not to make an excuse. The 2014 team blew it. The 2015 team blew it. The team in the bubble blew it. The team in 2021 didn't blow it. They just got unlucky. Kawhi got hurt against Joe Ingles and the Jazz in Game 4. Now we need that luck to go our way for once. And I really hope it does this upcoming season, 2023-24. But let me know what you think. Who do you think is the best Clipper team of all time? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know every single time we post a video. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper and LA sports content. And Locked On Clippers, free and available on all your favorite podcast platforms. The age-old proverb continues, go Clippers.